We reached our limit. No.
Okay, she's in.
Okay.
Let's get this on. Put it on your Facebook. So people go on Facebook.
Yeah.
What am I doing here? One second. Unorthodox discussion. As soon as this goes on, we'll let the last people in. Okay, hello everyone, and good evening. I'm so happy to see you all. We're having a little technical difficulty. This is the first large event we're doing. We generally have up to 100 participants. The Zoom, we got room for more participants, but we're having some problems. I'm not 100% sure why. So if anyone asks you, we're on Facebook Live as well. So people can watch it on Facebook Live at Chabad, facebook.com/Chabad of the town. So good evening to everyone. My name, for those who may not know me, is Rabbi Moshe Krasnansky. My wife Dina.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you. For those of you that don't know me,
From Chabad Tmr. It's very meaningful and special to welcome you tonight, our extended Chabad family, who we miss seeing personally during these last few months, and those who are joining here with us for the first time. We're here tonight to discuss the Netflix miniseries Unorthodox. Many of you have watched it, and I was approached a while ago, actually inundated by many people who had questions, comments, remarks, statements on what they saw in the series, that I was almost forced to watch it. I don't really watch much film out there. And once I did, I felt that this really deserves an open discussion of what is the real truth of life within the ultra-Orthodox world. The ultra-Orthodox world is shrouded in mystery for most Jews, and usually when there is a mystery, there are many types of stereotypes and other things that all of a sudden arise. So tonight, we will get a glimpse into this world with our guests, Sara Berkovic and Berel Solomon, and we'll have more on them in a moment. The purpose, I just want to be clear what the purpose of tonight's event and discussion is not to argue or discredit what was shown in the film or Esti Shapiro or perhaps the real person, Deborah Feldman, on whose book the series is loosely based. It's really to unveil the world where she came from, which the film obviously tries to depict in a certain way, and to really understand more about that world and the inner workings of that world. So the way it will work tonight is that first we will have our two panelists, Sara Berkovic and Berel Solomon, that will speak about their lives and their worlds. And then after they both present, we will address questions. How will questions be addressed? To keep it we have a large group here, to keep it in a working manner. So what I suggest is that anyone who has a question, as you hear, while you hear any of them speaking, or any other time during tonight's evening, if you have a question, go in the chat. On the bottom or on the top of your screen, there's a chat button. You go on your chat and you write your question there. I am receiving all the questions. Many of you may ask the similar questions. When it comes to question time, I will present these questions to our panelists, and we will have a chance to hear from them and then to take it further into the discussion. Sometimes the question you may have may be answered during their talk. You may want to wait, but you can feel free to put in the question as soon as you have it, and we'll go through them, and we'll be able to have a chance to really hear, and everything is on the table. Obviously, it's a respectful evening. We're not here to talk down anything. It's really to explore and understand, but everything is on the table, and it's an open discussion, as we said. So our first presenter will be Sara Burke. Let me tell you a little bit about Sara before she really tells you about herself. So Sara is a first cousin of Deborah Feldman, the one whose book this film, this miniseries is based on, and who Esti Shapiro in the film is really trying to play. Sara grew up in Williamsburg and received a typical Satmar, that's the Hasidic community, the big one in Williamsburg, the ultra-Orthodox community in Williamsburg, a typical Satmar education and upbringing. At the young age of 19, 20, she was married, had a child, and divorced in 1 year. So she got married like the typical girl, young, but within that year of marriage, having a child, she was divorced. Not necessarily so typical. She herself, Sara, left the community, or as they say in the ultra-Orthodox world or in the Orthodox world, went off the derech, which means the religious path, and in the process felt very vulnerable, alone, hurt, and pushed away from the community, where they called her a misfit. But then her life took a turn that is not always so typical, because as she found her freedoms of a secular lifestyle, totally secular lifestyle, to the point of being involved with non-Jews intimately and getting ready to marry a non-Jew, somehow she found that life wasn't satisfying enough. And she kept on searching. And eventually, Sara found her way back to Judaism. Not exactly where she came from, but she found her way back to Judaism. And that's what we're going to hear about tonight, about her world that she came from, and a lot of the things that you may have seen in the film. What's the real truth of what happens in that world? Now, Sara is not a speaker. She actually spoke for the first time last week, and I heard her speak in California, obviously by Zoom. But she feels the need to share her life so people know the truth and what the real reality is, rather than hearsay and stereotypes, as Sara has lived on both sides of the fence. The rest, we will hear from Sara directly. And again, any questions you have, put it on the chat as you think of them. And now we're going to open up for Sara to talk. Let me find her here. Okay, so now we're going to have Sara talk. Sara?
Yes, I am here. Hi, Rabbi. Good evening. How are you?
Baruch Hashem, we're good. Everyone's on mute, but you're the one talking now. Welcome.
Okay. All right. So, gosh, where to begin? It's a little bit of a long one, but I'm gonna try to keep it as short as possible. I grew up in Williamsburg, within the Satmar community. Now, Satmar is really important to note, and ultra-Orthodox Jews in general, like, like Hasidim, as you might call them, it's really, today anyway, it's a very broad spectrum. I would like to point that out. But when I was growing up, I'm 29 years young now, and I have a 9-year-old son, a boy. Things were very different. Williamsburg is a very insular community. Nothing ever is going to compare to Williamsburg. And the way I was raised and the way it kind of began, um, it was just it was very insular growing up. Like no magazines, no radio, like none of that stuff. It was a very confined world, and you know, and children growing up in this community don't know that much about the outside world. Now, how did Satmar get their kind of wherewithal? At the head of the Satmar community was the Satmar Rebbe, the old Satmar Rebbe. He came from Hungary. So essentially Williamsburg is very Hungarian. Most people in Williamsburg are from the Satmar community. There are a couple of smaller Hasidic sects in Williamsburg, but mainly Satmar. Now Satmar Rebbe, the way Satmar Rebbe created the community after the war was very much about not just keeping Judaism and Yiddishkeit alive. It was more like being proud in America to be a Jew, not just in the heart, but on the outside, and how you're going to walk on the street, and how the men and the women should be dressed, and really showing it to the outside world at a time when people were very ashamed to show that they were Jewish. So as a child, me going to Satmar school, some of the customs, Satmar Rebbe, he created, it was very much about modesty for the girls. So one of the things that Satmar Rebbe came up with was a stocking for the girls, and it was called palm socks. It was a very thick stocking, something like 70 denier like tights for the girls in school to wear, and wore his symbol of a palm tree because the Satmar Rebbe's name was Teitelbaum. And in Yiddish, you say, in Yiddish, a palm tree is a Teitelbaum. So that was his, the symbol on all of the stockings. And that was something that only Satmar did. And he was very, he was very adamantly, openly talking about all the time about like modesty for the girls. So we're talking at a time when rebuilding in America, coming out from the Holocaust, this was very much built on survival. It was very much built on pretty much reclaiming Yiddishkeit and Judaism at a time when there was none in America. Now again, like I said, today Satmar is a really broad spectrum, and there are people on all sides of the coin. But when I was growing up, it was very insular, and there was not, like, we did not know much other than our kind of immediate surroundings. So what was my childhood like? There were a lot of beautiful parts to it that, that it's just one of the reasons why I came back. That you just, I don't think from my time like searching and kind of being out in the world that I've ever found anything close to with what I grew up with. And my parents are not like, they're not like fanatic, but like I did come from a very strict home, based on a lot of the Satmar principles. Like my mother does shave, and my father is a traditional Streimel, black and white kind of guy. But definitely that was more or less with what I was raised. And yeah, there was just not much that I knew growing up about the outside world. Now, my grandfather, the one who is quite portrayed in the movie, and he was kind of the crown of our family, and part of the reason why I agreed to do it was really in his name. He raised my cousin. She lived by him for many years, and he was a very integral part of not only society but also of our in our family. My grandfather was one of the first pioneering Hasidim in Williamsburg to not only like wear a beard at a time when nobody was wearing a beard, but he was also a man full of wit and wisdom, and like he set up a business in Williamsburg at a time when people were not even finding work or thinking about setting up their own work. He was very much a pioneer in that sense. So in terms of like growing up with my cousin, I said this last week when I spoke, and I'm going to say this again. I really, if anyone in the family, I think, can feel what she went through, I would say it's me, because we were very similar in some ways, that we were free, open thinking, kind of full of trying to express ourselves kind of people, and she was very much like that, and she is a brilliant writer, a brilliant person. But I think in the time that we were growing up, there was not much room in Satmar, in the community, for people to kind of be a little bit open with different views, or just different things to talk about. And it was very much like shut down. It was not something that was a discussion at the table or a discussion in school, or, Satmar, I would say, is very much the type of community, the way they raise their children, and the girls and even the boys, it's very much based on halacha. It's not, in terms of Chabad is a lot about contemplating God and going a lot more into the mystical things of Judaism and Yiddishkeit, and Satmar is very much about the do's and don'ts. And it's a system that works. It works very well for most people, for many people, like people out their way and doing the same thing. But really, it's not. There are many beautiful things to it, that people choose this life because they want to and they see the beauty in it. But definitely in terms of Hasidic movements between, say, Chabad and Satmar is a lot less contemplation of God, and more about, this is what you are allowed to, this is what you are not allowed to, and this is what your home and your children should be looking like. So yeah, like for me, growing up in school, or there was no room for my questions. They did get shut down, and the minute you start to kind of like ask, and you already kind of try to set yourself apart from the crowd, you kind of are deemed a little bit of a misfit. And in a community like Williamsburg and Satmar, where you're not really fitting in with a kind of typical stereotype mainstream crowd, even if you're a little bit different, okay, fine. But if you're already kind of individual, like you have your own individual expression, especially in those days, it was very much frowned upon. And again, it's important to note that at the time that my cousin was kind of pioneering outward, the term OTD, which I don't know if many of you are familiar with, it's called, OTD stands for off the derech, which means off the beaten path. That was not a thing. That was really not something people were familiar with. Nobody was really doing it. And if somebody even thought it, they just kept it to themselves. It was very much about, like, you either follow or you really kind of fall to the sidelines. And if you came from a prominent kind of background and having money or status in the community, you were kind of able to bend the rules a little bit. But if you didn't, then you really felt it. And for my cousin, I would say that she felt it, and she grew up in the shadow of Holocaust survivors. That's something that I can't even, like, imagine what it must have been like, because as much as my grandparents, they're the most loving, warm, kind-hearted people. She did not have this family, the sense of family and parenthood that most children need growing up. And couple that with kind of being an individualist in a place like Satmar, it doesn't kind of work very well. And in that particular in that area, I was very much able to identify with her, because I was not mainstream and I was not typical, and I was not really in the confines of the Satmar do's and don'ts. So that's a little bit about kind of like my background, my relationship with her growing up. We did I lived right next to my grandparents, and so I did spend a lot of time with her, with my grandparents, and so I did have I would say like a closer relationship with her than any of like my other cousins, and so I did get to know her well, and that's a little bit about that. Now, going more to what it's like once you're like out of school, and how it works kind of in the working world and in the marriage world in Satmar and in Williamsburg in general, is also a lot more different than almost any other, definitely different than Chabad and other communities. I would say Satmar, has it, I don't know if the word is extreme, but it definitely looks extreme to the outside world. Like things that you've, like what I want to touch on is like things in the movies that are a little bit stereotypical, and I would say it was overdone and not very precise. So in the area of bishos, which is something that you've seen in the movie, which is in the modern world, we call it dating, a boy and a girl getting to know each other, and how it's kind of, how that world operates from. Now, the whole idea of a bisho, which is essentially a girl and boy sitting down to a table or something, trying to get to know each other, again, the reason why it looks extreme and how they've gotten kind of to that place, so to say, is also because of the laws of, if a boy and girl are going to start to date and they're going to start to get closer with one another, they might have intimacy before marriage, and that's not something that's allowed. And so the best way for a girl and boy to kind of get to the marriage stage is if the parents will check out the boys, the boy's parents will check out the girl, and vice versa. And then by the time they put them together, it's kind of already like a done deal. However, I very much want to note that how it was portrayed in the movie is not accurate. Why? Because today already, and even then, like everyone has the you can speak up. Now again, I can't speak for the extreme families, but I could speak, say, for like my family, like my sister. She did sit in with a guy and had the typical bisho, but they had one of like 4 or 5 times, and they spoke for many hours. So the way it was portrayed in the movie, no, it's not accurate. It's yes, they sit in, they don't go out really. But if a girl feels like she needs more time and she wants to ask that of her parents, or if the parents feel that for this particular child, the child needs more than just that one sit in, they will do it. It's again, like, cannot speak for in every community and in every sect and in every part. There will always be radicals and extremists, but for most people it does work. And it works because the parents, first of all, do so much information on the children. They make sure that the families check out, that the boy checks out, the girl checks out. By the time they come to kind of the table to talk with each other, because of course they're not going to know each other in a very intimate level, but the point is for them to not be intimate before marriage, because that's not allowed from a halachic or law, from the aspect of like the law of what is allowed and what is not. So like that was one thing that was a little bit taken out of context in terms of the movie. Again, to some people this does look extreme, especially when, you know, in the modern world, this is not something people do. They do believe in being intimate and being close and having a relationship, but in this world, for the majority, it works. And I can speak to so many marriages that I know, because I'm now close with the community, and I am kind of, even though I've set myself apart and I found my way, I do have close connections, and I am in that community. Like I work with Hasidim, and I have my relationships with people, that there are so many beautiful, beautiful, beautiful marriages that started out with that, and it doesn't get to the point of kind of like divorce or anything. Their intimacy is fresh off of like marriage. It's something they very much look forward to without having outside distractions. The men are completely for their wives, the wives are completely for their men. They're not looking for outside what's the word? They're not looking for anything on the outside, because they're getting whatever they really need within their marriage. And the children that grow up from these relationships are incredible and healthy children. Now, again, there are always going to be, you know, like the rotten apples or things that don't work out, but by and large, like this is very much kind of how it's been and how it continues, and how it's been working for many. Now, in terms of like my family, we did have a little bit of a broad spectrum. Like I had aunts and uncles that like didn't aunts, sorry, not uncles, just aunts that didn't shave their heads and were more open-minded and still accepted in the community, and still had like, you know, like still found their belonging and their acceptance. And so I would say that my family was not to the extreme level. And my grandfather, he was a Holocaust survivor, but he put so much love and excitement into everything that he did, from a real pious and righteous place. It wasn't because he felt this is what everyone is doing. It was really something that he believed in, and this is what came forward. And yeah, the part that is a little bit you know, it's a little bit kind of tough for me to touch on that is that my cousin Devorah, as I said, she did have a little bit of a troubling background, and you know, her personal background, and that played a huge role in her leaving. I firmly believe that. And as much as my grandparents did give her, and you know, the love of a grandparent can never take the place of a parent. And like I said, couple that with feeling a little bit like a misfit in a community that's very much about the do's and don'ts and things working in a particular way, it's a recipe for somebody not feeling like they belong and wanting to search outside and finding a different way. So yeah, so there was another question that I got about again, also like, why is this community insular, and why they chose it like that, and how are women, you know, really treated like, because there's a lot of controversy out there about how women are in this community and if they're treated as second class citizens, so to say. So I'm going to touch a little bit on my history, because I think it's important to see like the contrast. And I, as the rabbi mentioned, I got married at a young age, and at the time that I married, everything was kind of happening very fast and very unexpected, and emotionally I was not very ready for a lot of it. And I was also having my questions and things that I kind of like wanted, and I didn't feel like there was that much room for it to be expressed. Now, anyone knows this from even a psychological standpoint, that when you enter any relationship and you're not really in a very healthy place, the chances of that working out very well are they're just slim. Now, in my case and in my story, I did marry somebody that came from a little bit like a religiously like fanatic background. It wasn't for the sake of God or Hashem. It was a little bit more about like, this is what you need to do, this is what you can do, don't ask questions, don't whatever. And bring that into a relationship and a marriage, yes, a woman is going to find herself very much controlled by her husband, not feeling like she has a voice, very much like a second-class citizen. But that had a lot to do with the background. In many of the healthy relationships in Williamsburg with Hasidim, the women are very much in the forefront. They're just not out there in the open. They're the ones who are raising the children. They're the ones who their husbands are asking all the time for advice, coming home to, and sharing their day with them, asking them even sometimes in business. I know many people who have businesses within the community, and they rely on their wives to help guide them. So even though they look like they're like some of them are in the background and they're not in the forefront, they really are behind the scenes. They're very much in the forefront, and they are the ones building the home. And in terms of like work, yes, they can work, they can have careers. It's just not, Satmar was just not a thing. Like going to college was just going on a college campus and mingling again, because it had a lot to do with, you're going to go on a college campus, you're going to start mingling with boys, and what's going to happen then? From there, it's like you're going to cross one boundary, you're going to cross another boundary. At some point, you're just going to kind of lose it all together. So it was very much about keeping it within. But so many women in the community have careers in like trade careers and like design, like interior design and makeup, or like hair and a lot of those kind of things, or even like personal trainers. They took a course online and became a personal trainer, going to people's homes, and they're very, very, very successful. And if they don't need to go out to the outside secular world to make their money over there, and they're getting their needs met within the community, they're very happy, very satisfied. Why should they want to go out? So in terms of that, it's sorry, my phone stopped for a moment. So in terms of that, they don't really need to go that far out, because they are happy. Now, what happens when somebody does feel like they want to go out? So again, in my days when we were growing up, it was very much frowned upon. It was not something that was agreeable to go to college, to want to have like a career, to kind of venture out. And it was not even something that was mentioned or really talked about. I remember at some point I did mention college to my parents, and they were very, very anti. It wasn't that you went to college and then you got married. It was that you got married and you started to build a home. Today, I would say things have very much shifted, and there's so much more awareness that our generation just needs something a little bit different, and we can still do it within the confines of the community, of halacha or the laws, and still kind of you can still be who you are and have a place within the community and still kind of be an individual. But in those days, it was just not really like a thing. So that's where the whole, like college and career and the woman kind of where a woman stands in the home kind of ties in. I hope I'm kind of, I hope people are understanding where I'm coming from, but I will take questions and explain more if need be. So what happened to me was that, I married somebody who was just really from a very fanatic background, and I did not find my place, and that already on top of a lot of other things just pushed me to divorce. So after that, I'm gonna just make this really short because I know many people are waiting for Berel and for other people to wanna speak. So I'm gonna keep it short, and I'm gonna kind of end with this. I went off because I didn't find my place and I didn't feel accepted, and I just felt really like a misfit. On top of that, I had a marriage that was just really, really there was no love, there was no acceptance, there was just none of that. And that is something that turned me off so much. It was like I had nobody to talk to, nobody to go to. It was just being 19, looking around and seeing what the outside world is doing at the age of 19, 20, and contrasting that with my life. It just really, really, really pushed me off. Now going out and just really starting to, going to bars, hanging out with guys, just really doing everything that's kind of going on in the secular world, trying to pursue a career, thinking that fame, money, and all of that other stuff is really going to take me to where I want to go, was just very alluring to me. And, and all that time, I obviously was missing all the warmth and all the things that I grew up with, like on a Hanukkah, my father's singing, on a Shabbat, my mother's lighting candles, like just things that no matter how much I went through or what I felt like growing up, this was not something that I was going to find outside, like that warmth, that aspect of Judaism and Yiddishkeit that I could not go to a Shabbat meal and it was just about food. Whereas where I come home to my parents, it's a lot about the atmosphere. It's an energy. It's God in every single aspect of it. And it's not because you need to check it off. It's because it's real. It's really real. And I could not find that anywhere. And however much I was making my way in the world and really climbing the ladder, that was missing. So after a while, and through a lot of things that were happening, I found Chabad, I found Breslov, I found a couple of other communities. I started to see that it's not just all black and white. It's not exactly how I was raised within the community, and there is another path. And I started to come closer, and eventually I came back. So I think that covers most of it. Yeah. Is there anything else I left out? I'm not sure. Rabbi, what do you think? Have I left out something?
I think we're going to have some questions. You'll be able to answer some of the things that you may have left out. But I think it was very nice, giving a little bit of a picture growing up. And I think they may want to hear a little more. We'll see if it's in the questions. What happens when someone is independent? Are they able to voice their opinion in any way? how do parents support or don't support that type of thing in your situation, or your cousins, where she really had grandparents. So those are some of the things maybe we want to get to when we get to the questions, and maybe a little bit more about what is really married life. You said, most people are happy, but is it as depicted in the movie, where it's really just about you get married to have children? There's no real love going on. It's just sort of that was a mechanical part.
Yeah, I see. I left out a couple of details. Now that you're bringing it up, I will get back to it. Yeah.
So if you want to address any of it now, or else we'll get back to it when we have the questions.
I do want to address a little bit about the married life, because again, I'm not one to say this is a perfect world. Absolutely not. And that's the reason why I left it. And as I mentioned about my own personal story in my marriage, definitely there was no place for me to voice, to speak up, to be a person. And it was much about just listening to my husband, and doing what he wants, and and kind of following the footsteps that was laid out for me by whatever he thought was right. And there are still those cases. There will always be that case in every community, but most of the people that I come across now, that I have been coming across, even in this community, there's a room for the woman, and in terms even of intimacy, however it was depicted in the movie is just such a far-fetched example. I cannot even begin to stress it, because again, it's an insular world. People are not going to go out there and advertise their, excuse my graphic language, their sex lives. It's just not something that's done in that community. It's taboo because of the modesty of it. It's between a husband and a wife, and not to the outside world. But I do know of quite a few Hasidic people who have beautiful, intimate, relationships, and between themselves, it's like fair game, so to say, and on top of the part of like a woman having to go through the monthly ritual and all of that, that is solely not because of the community. That's because of God, and because if there was no renewal in a relationship, and everything was allowed at all times, let's take a look outside and see how boring it gets. So many women that have beautiful relationships with their husbands, they come to love this time of the month. I know that for me, it's something I look forward to. I'm like, it's gonna be special, and it's something that, especially if you have a relationship that you work on, and the husband and wife are for each other, it's a very, very beautiful and sacred thing. And the women, many women, love this. It's not a talked about thing, again, because of modesty, and because it should be between the husband and the wife and God. But definitely to say that it's that this is for everybody, no. But at the same time, for many people, it does work beautifully. Again, there are ultra orthodox people. I would not know what it looks like for them, but by and large, many people I've come across, they see it as beautiful, and they don't see it as something they need to search for outside. Yes, it's a little bit, I would say, different, because they don't have maybe multiple partners or something before marriage, but that's what makes it all the more beautiful, because they're for each other. They're not really looking that much to go outside, especially if they're satisfied, versus even for me, kind of going out and then coming back, it's still something I struggle with almost on a very, wouldn't say daily, but it's something that it's always going to be a challenge, because I know what it was like on the outside. So that's where the contrast is. I think that covers the marriage part. The rest I'm gonna address in questions, things that I've missed.
So Sara, Thank you very, very much. That's very, very beautiful to be able to share. And I know it's not easy to share, and I'm sure we'll have any questions. We may dig a little deeper. But thank you very, very much. And I want to now introduce our other presenter, panelist, who may be known to many. Berel Solomon, a local Montrealer, who many may have known him as Ryan Solomon. Grew up, like many Montreal, a traditional Jewish background, Jewish day school. At a young age, was very much out there. At already 17, 18, he was into club promoting. He even made a reality show about the nightclub business with hip hop artists. I think Drake was one of them. And he even, when he made his reality show, for the first time, he actually walked out in the middle of his own event. He was searching for something. It wasn't enough for him. And in his search, he went through many other places, churches, mosques, ashrams. But at the age of 22, Berel found his Judaism. And today, Berel living a fully committed, ultra-Orthodox life that is with his wife from Panama, also ultra-Orthodox Chabad, but still ultra-Orthodox, as you heard, with his wife and his 3 children. We see and hear a lot of him out there and trying to be very successful in business and taking people along in this journey. But today, we're going to hear a little what happens when someone is coming from a very secular life where the world is open to you to do whatever you want. There are no rules, there's no laws. And then you choose to come into a life where you have a lot of restrictions and a lot of, don'ts. And I think it's important to hear this side to understand that process. And then after we hear from Berel, then we get a chance to entertain the questions and get more questions. So, Berel, you're on, and you have the floor. I thought you were unmuted. One second. Right here. You're good, Berel, now, right?
All right. How is everybody doing? What's up, Rabbi Rebbe? Thank you, everybody, for joining. Amazing people. Beautiful. We have 100 people on Zoom. If we would have had more capability, I think there would have been a few hundred. On Facebook, what's going on? We have like 150 people, very close to it. God bless everybody.
We're going to sue Zoom. They were supposed to give us more spaces, but somehow.
Okay. Anyways, next time they know when Chabad of the town does event, they'll be there first. That's the deal. Rabbi Rebbe, I want to ask you, how politically correct do I have to be, or how honest can I be?
Be honest. That's all we want.
It's an open, honest discussion.
Honest.
Honest.
You sure? I warned you.
Okay.
I asked you permission.
Okay.
All right. First of all, I watched that movie Unorthodox. I was cringing the entire time. It made me absolutely sick to my stomach. I watched the whole thing with my wife only because I had so many people calling me and telling me about this Meshuggah video, and I had to watch it. My heart goes out to this poor girl that had a bad experience. But anybody who watched that video, I don't really feel bad for a woman who ran away from her husband and cheated on him in Berlin and made her chase him there. I'm sorry, I don't feel bad. All right? It's not an accurate representation of what actually goes on. Here's my personal story of my adventure. I want to make a video. I'm in the video production business. I want to make a video called Ultra Orthodox, the clapback to unorthodox. Because it's every Netflix video portrays Orthodox Judaism in the same way. And I'm sick and tired of it. So here's my story, all about how my life got twisted upside down. And I want to take a minute. So I was 17 years old, and I had a friend of mine, he says, Berel, I promote in nightclubs, and why don't you come help me out? So I decided, okay, fine, I'm going to try it. In Montreal, the legal drinking age is 18 years old. It's just a suggestion. They suggest you wait till you're 18, but you can really start sooner. So I started making deals with club owners when I was 17 years old, and I started bringing all my friends to nightclubs. The best night to do it was Shabbos. Friday night was the best. Everybody got their allowance. Everybody could come and drink. It was a machaya. It was amazing. I started schlepping hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Jews to nightclubs on Friday night. And it was an amazing experience as a 17-year-old guy in charge of the club. you could imagine how cool it was. 18 years old, I continued doing it. 19 years old, 20 years old, I kept on building and growing. The name of my company was called More to Life Entertainment. I wasn't getting my kicks anymore. I decided, let's start bringing celebrities down to Montreal. The biggest celebrity I ever brought to Montreal was Drake. He's probably the largest rapper in the world today. You could check it out on YouTube. Type Ryan Solomon Drake. You'll find us there hanging out. That was 10 years ago. And I said to myself, at that time, the Kardashians were becoming popular 10 years ago. Facebook was just becoming popular as well. And I remember my secret sauce to promoting in the nightclubs was I would film all my competitors were taking pictures in the nightclub, and they would put their logo on the right-hand side of the party. I would take a video. I'd have a videographer come. I'd put my logo on the right-hand side, and the video would go out the next day on Facebook. Everybody wanted to be part of my parties because they knew they were going to make an appearance on Facebook the next day. So I started filming this reality show about all of what we were doing, all the business dealings. We would travel, we were bringing celebrities, everything. I made a reality show. I was like 20 years old. I took together all the footage. I was preparing it for 6 months. I slaved. I made a red carpet event. We had people lined up. I hired videographers, fake videographers. I paid a couple of guys. I paid 10, 15 guys $50 each to stand there on the red carpet as people were going by. And I go to air the reality show in front of almost 1,000 people at a club called 1234 in Montreal. It doesn't exist anymore. There was people scouting for the show to see if it was going to get picked up on the network. I go to air the show. It was supposed to be the crowning achievement of my life, of my career at that point. And I air it, and I see myself on the screen, and I crash. And I walked out of my own event without telling anybody. And I humbly walked into a cab, and I went home. And in the cab on the ride home, I was thinking to myself, what the heck did I just do to myself? What do I stand for? I stand for drugs, sex, and rock and roll. And that's what I'm promoting to the world. And I have to be that guy for the rest of time. I have to be that guy for the rest of history. They're right over here. And I didn't want to be that guy. And I said to myself, I have to figure out a way to live, because this is not the proper way to live. I don't want to be part of this anymore. So in my heart, in my mind, Judaism was a complete lie. It was BS. And it wasn't, not talking Berel Solomon, real BS. Because I went to a Jewish school, and in my Jewish school growing up, my high school, nobody put on tefillin, and nobody kept kosher, and nobody kept Shabbos. And I trusted the people around me, and I trusted the people that were teaching me. And these people, if they weren't keeping Shabbos, they weren't keeping tefillin or kosher, they're older than me, they're wiser than me, they're smarter than me, they probably looked into it, they probably found out that Judaism was not true, and I wanted truth. So I started looking towards all other types of religions. I went to, hang on, even before the other religions. Why did I not look towards Judaism? Hang on, my wife is giving me messages here, hang on. Talk about where you came from, your family, not religious. Okay, fine, thank you. So my wife told me that I should talk about, thank you, Eliana. By the way, shout out to Eliana Solomon, the best. Eliana Dornbush fan, you're the best. I came from a house that was completely not religious. So much love in my family, so much tender love. I had the best parents, I had the best sibling, the best. We just didn't know any better. We didn't know any better. Friday night, we were excited for pork chops. That was like our big Friday night. We didn't know any better. If you lit the Shabbos candles, we didn't know it. We didn't know what time to light them. We lit them at night, day, morning, who knows? My parents always made sure there was Shabbos. God bless you, Mommy and Tati. They always sent us to Jewish secular school. God bless you, Mommy and Tati. But we didn't know any better. And in Montreal, okay, this is where it gets a little bit uncomfortable. I'm going to be totally honest with everybody. This is where the honesty. Rabbi, we could be honest. We're okay? In Montreal, I have a bone to pick with Montreal. Because Montreal, they do not, the non-Orthodox world, that's where I come from, right? It's who I know, it's who I am, not making some statement, I'm from that world, believes that being religious and being Orthodox means that you're going to be poor. It happens to be, you should know, I think in Montreal, it is challenging for the Jewish people the religious Jewish people to make a living here, or at least was. I think French was a big part of the problem. I think Quebec culture was a big part of the problem. But I grew up my whole life, not necessarily from my home, from my outside influences, believing religious people equal poor people. They have a lot of kids, they're dirty, they don't make money, they can't speak the language, they don't want to learn, they don't want to go to school, and they're poor and they're beggars and all this nasty stuff. So I'm on a vendetta right now. You know, the rabbi introduced me as a businessman. I'm on a vendetta right now. Hang on, I'm going to get to that. So this is my whole perception of Orthodox Judaism. Not to mention, I was told many, many times from many people that Orthodox Jews, when we'd see them on the street, they would tell me that those people, they would point to those beautiful people with, you know, with payas or a hat, the women wear hats or wigs, whatever it is, they don't consider us Jewish. So when I used to drive on Shabbos and I would see them walking with their beautiful families, I would want to hit them with my car because I was told that they don't respect me. And I was told that they don't consider me a Jew. And I used to want to hit them with my car. So that's when I exploded after the reality show. The last place I wanted to go was Judaism. I was misled my entire life. So I started to go to churches. I started to go to mosques. I started to go to meditate, Buddhism. I had books in my room. I had books up to the ceiling, piles and piles and piles of books. My mother said to me, "There's no room for your books anymore." I would chew a book a day. And every religion, there was like a little bit of truth, a little glimmer. The problem is, I kept on hitting the ceiling. I learned every book there was in Buddhism. I read the Quran front to back. I read the Old Testament, the new whatever it is, the New Testament. I read it front to back. I read all of Siddhartha, all of Buddhism books, everything I read, but it just didn't, there was a ceiling. There was a ceiling. I was like a top Buddhist at one point. I said to my mother at one point, there is a ashram, a Buddhist temple in Montreal, and I want to go. She says, before you go to the Buddhist temple, do yourself a favor, go to shul. So I went to Sher Zion on Kotzebue Road. There was a chazan there at the time. His name was Boaz Davidoff. He was a Breslever chassid. And the guy was so happy when he didn't walk, he floated. He didn't speak, he sang. And the guy was genuinely happy. And I said to myself, whatever this guy knows, I have to know, no matter what. And I stuck to him, and I clinged to him, and I started going every Shabbos, and I started going every day, and I started learning. And the material that I was learning was so rich. Judaism was so rich. You have to understand that I lived in a desert before this. I lived in a complete desert. I lived in the secular world. Fat, disgusting, stands for nothing. The more drugs, sex, and rock and roll, the more greater you are in the real world. It's not real. And then I went to all the other religions. It's not real. And then I went to Judaism. It's the sweetest water, sweetest thing you could ever taste. A boy at 22 years old, reintroduced to his Tati B'Shamayim, his Father in heaven, Hashem himself. How powerful that is. Every person is connected to Hashem in a certain way. Every person, I don't care who you are, how secular, how religious, how whatever it is, every person has had an experience with Hashem. It could be when the plane was turbulent and you grabbed your seat and you prayed to God and you didn't even know where that came from. You're connected to God. When I was young, when I was 6 years old, before we would go to Florida, I would pray every night. The night before, I'd say, God, please land the plane. If the plane happens to, if the engines fail, please take your hand and guide the plane back to earth. I was 6 years old. I didn't know who God was. I for sure didn't know who God was because of the schools that I went to. Shame on the schools. Shame on the elementaries. I had no idea who God was, but every Jew knows who God is because it's inside the heart. And at 22 years old, I was reacquainted with this. Wow, amazing. And you would think that at 22 years old, when I was the worst of the worst, guys, I wish I could tell you, a person's not supposed to, it's painful to talk about it today. A person's not supposed to speak badly about themselves. I was the lowest of the lowest of the low. I was a good boy. I was a good Jewish boy, a good neshama, but I didn't know how to be good. I was the lowest of the low. You can't get in, I don't want to get into it right now. And you would think that the people around me would be happy for me. You think that my friends would want to learn. You think that my family would be all into it. And it was like the opposite. I remember one night I went for dinner with my parents to a kosher restaurant. And I had a teacher from my old high school, a Judaic teacher. She was in Jewish studies. And she sees me walking in with my parents. And she sees I'm wearing tzitzits and a kippah. And she says to my parents, she pulls them aside. She says, I just want you to know, the rabbis are brainwashing your kid, and you better be careful. And I said to her very politely, like a mensch, I said, thank you for telling my parents that, Mrs. I'm not going to mention her name, but I came to your class every single day from the age of 15 years old, drugged out of my mind on weed. My eyes were bloodshot red. I stank like dope. Every day I walked into your class, I smelled like dope, and you never said a word to my parents. Here I put on a kippah, and I put on tzitzits, and now you're telling my parents they should be worried? I didn't understand. My friends, you think I had friends, you think they'd get into it. I couldn't open up a Torah with a crowbar if my life depended on it. I kept on working. One day I get a call from one of the owners of one of the clubs that I was working at. His name is Giovanni, good guy, good friend of mine. And he said, and I told him that, I asked him if I could start wearing my kippah to the nightclubs, to work. He said to me, Ryan, I am a Christian and you are a Jew. If you don't believe, how am I supposed to believe? You wear your funny little hat. Turns out the next day I was fired. It happened to have been a big blessing. He knew I wasn't into it anymore. I couldn't stand the nightclub business. It just completely was not in line with the life that I wanted to live. So I turned around after I hung up with him. I turned around in the car. I went to go work for my father. Had a great relationship working with him. It was amazing. We really, really did well together. But at a certain point, I wanted to go to yeshiva. Yeshiva is a place, it's a place where you go, you learn. It's like university for Torah, right? Problem was I had built up a very significant part of my father's business, and to let me go was a very difficult thing for him to do. So we went back and forth for 6 months, back and forth, fighting. It got so heated at a certain point that I remember I went out into my balcony and I looked up at the clouds. I looked up at heaven and I said to Hashem, I said, God, I don't think that you're going to punish me for going to yeshiva. The problem is in Montreal, I don't know about the rest of the world. I'm just talking about Montreal. I don't know about the rest of the world. The rest of the world, speak for yourself. In Montreal, if you're an Orthodox Jew, you're poor. So if I'm going to go to yeshiva, I'm going to become poor. If I'm going to go learn Torah, I'm going to be poor. If I'm going to go there for a year, my whole world is going to fall apart, and I'm going to be behind everybody, and everybody's going to be ahead of Big B, and it's going to be miserable, and the world is going to end, and my life is going to be over. The nice thing about having God in your life is it's so clear what you have to do, even if it's painful. And against the wishes of my parents, I hopped on a plane and I went to go to Mayanot Yeshiva in Jerusalem for a year. And it was the best decision that I ever made in my entire life. Because in that year, I figured out who I was. I didn't have pressure around me. Everybody, when I was in Montreal, everybody wanted Ryan to be who they wanted them to be. I had to be the club guy. I had to be the promoter guy. I had to be the cool guy. I couldn't be who I wanted to be. So I went to yeshiva. I was never a good student ever in my entire life. I failed every exam. The only reason why I went through school and I passed is because I cheated. I hated it. I was miserable at it. No good. But I was the best student by far. The best student, top, not 2, not 3, number 1 best student in all of the yeshiva. Because I loved what I was doing. And I chose to do it. And when I came back home after a year of this growth, you can't imagine, by the way, I don't think I'm emphasizing how beautiful this growth is. You want good Chinese food, you go to China. You want good Italian food, you go to Italy. You want good Torah, you go to Jerusalem. I sat in Jerusalem. You think about this. A mile away, a kilometer away, 8-minute walk away from where the Beis HaMikdash was, is, and will be. And I'm learning the same Torah that mentions Yerushalayim and I'm learning it from 7:30 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. And it was the sweetest thing in the world. In yeshiva, you sleep in order to learn Torah. You eat in order to learn Torah. You are connected to Hashem in ways that you cannot imagine in the secular world. And by the way, I'm in the secular world right now. Although I will say before I got onto this live that this lady wrote me a nasty message on LinkedIn because I said, follow my journey, talking about unorthodox, how I turned into ultra-orthodox. And she's like, you're not ultra-orthodox, blah, 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 you're far from that. I'm like, yes, maybe I'm far from it, but I would love to be ultra-orthodox. I would love to be ultra close to Hashem. What an amazing compliment that would be. So here comes this Farbissina movie, and it destroys everything that we stand for. And I know right now there's some people watching on Facebook that were so happy when that movie came out. They were sharing with each other, this is exactly what we need during COVID. That was the last thing we needed during COVID. Take something so beautiful. You know, in Montreal, they shut down the mikvah here. They're so proud of it. They shut down the mikvah, the place where the woman has to go when she's having her period. After her period, she goes there to purify herself so she can have intimacy with her husband. And they were so excited, the media and the secular community was so excited to shut down the mikvah in Montreal. You know who you are because you're watching right now. You were so excited to shut it down because in unorthodox, she's walking into the mikvah and she seems like it's the worst miserable experience of her life. Let me tell you something about mikvah. When you cannot be intimate with your loved one, with your spouse for 2 weeks, and you cannot touch each other, you cannot hug each other, you cannot imagine the fireworks that happen after those 2 weeks. Think about it. Orthodox man does not touch another woman, does not watch pornography, does not hug other women, does not nothing, guards his eyes like a mensch. And then after 2 weeks, after not touching his own wife, think about it for a second. So they were so happy to shut down the myth. So everything that I stood for in my life, this movie came to destroy. Then when I went to go get married, I'm not going to get into my previous love life before I was, religious. But let's just say I'm a handsome guy. I always had a few bucks on me, and I know how to talk. So that could put my previous love life into perspective. But every relationship I ever ended up with ended in me hurting somebody or somebody hurting me. At 13 years old, I was in a relationship. Does this make sense? 14 years old, 15 years old. By the time I was 20 years old, I had 20 girlfriends. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to anybody? And they say you're just supposed to cut your teeth. You know how many people I hurt? You know how many people hurt me? By the time I was 20 years old, I was so jaded. Who wanted to be in a relationship anymore? No wonder why people get divorced. No wonder why the secular world has a 50% divorce rate. Because they've already been divorced 20 times by the time they're married. It's like changing their underwear. They're used to it. It's not a big deal. Just this one comes with a piece of paper and the other one didn't. So when I went to go date, I didn't look at a girl. I didn't touch a girl for 4 years. 4 years. No pornography, no intimacy, all guarding my eyes like a mensch for 4 years. And then when I went to go get married, I dated in the most beautiful way. I made a profile. I said what I wanted. I said what I wanted my house to look like, what type of observance in my house I want to look like. I put a picture of myself that I took. It took me 300 pictures to get to the right one, but I finally found the right one. And I put on, and I had the very religious profile, the way you date in Orthodox Judaism. By the way, I'm ultra Orthodox. Please God, one day I should get to that point, to be such a mensch. But so I went to go date. So I started to make this profile. And funny story, on the profile, my coach who was helping me, I guess, make my profile, he said, it looks a little too religious. Please put please put on the profile something normal. So I put, I like to eat in restaurants. So I started sending that profile out to all these shatchanim, to all these matchmakers. Yes, like the movie, matchmaker, make me a match. That I made a profile for it, and I started to get calls back, and people wanted to date me. and I wanted to date them. And I went to go on these dates, and it was so amazing. And every person that I dated, there was no physical intimacy. There was no games. There was no, do I want to play a game with you and not text you back and you don't text me back? It was all straight. It was all straight. Everything was straight. And finally, after dating six people, I felt like there was nobody left for me. I felt there was no way I was going to find by the way, when I say dating, I mean like it was like 1 or 2 dates with 6 people over the course of like 5 weeks. And finally, I get a profile, and I was standing in my basement, and I opened up my email, and I looked at it, and I said, oh my gosh, I just saw my wife. And it was a picture and a profile of my wife. And my wife was there, and I said, I want to date this girl, I want to date this woman, and I want to get to know this person. And I called the shotgun right away, the matchmaker, and I said, I want to get to know her, and I want to go on a date with her. She says, okay, let me see if she wants to go on a date. They called her, she wanted to go on a date, and I booked a flight to go to Panama. And the next week I was in Panama. You cannot imagine how many people told me that I was crazy. You cannot imagine how many people told me, I don't think it's right, I think it's crazy, I think it's wild, you're going to Panama, you never spoke to her, you never messaged her, you never anything, please. And I got off the plane and I went to Panama. And I hit it off with my wife so well. And on the 3rd date, I knew she was for me. I wanted to marry her. Just from conversations. Did I love her? I can't say I loved her. We knew each other for 3 dates. But I really liked her. And on paper, she wanted everything that I wanted. She came to Montreal, and then within 2 or 3 weeks of her being in Montreal, I proposed to her. She said yes. She made me the luckiest man in the world. And we lived happily ever after. Today, thank God, we have 3 children. I own my own business. We do very well, thank God. I have a vendetta to prove that you could be an Orthodox Jew and be successful in business and be a mensch in the world and have a happy, beautiful, vibrant family. And that is my clap back to the movie Unorthodox. I hope I didn't scare you guys. I've just been holding this in for a long time since I saw this. And I might just make a movie about it one day with God's help, who knows. Rabbi, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Berel.
Berel, thank you very much. One thing is we see a lot of passion here tonight, and obviously nothing anyone is saying is, God forbid, trying to judge anyone. It's just everyone expressing of their journey, and we appreciate very much. And I want to now actually start off. I want to start off by bring up some of the questions that we that have been brought up. You can still chat some questions. If you're on Facebook and watching, write it on Facebook. The question, we're picking up the questions from Facebook. And I'm just going to mute Sara and Berel, and as we for the questions that are sort of directed towards them. So I want to talk a little. We had a few questions related to the film itself, and Sara, so I guess this is really directed towards you. I'll ask it in a few parts, and share with us how you want to address it. So number one, talking about marriage. So you said that you were matched with someone who was much more of a dogmatic, ultra-religious fellow, and it didn't work out well. So number one, were you forced into that marriage? Did you just say, because my parents like it, I accept it? Was there, what was the scenario sort of that you would end up in a marriage with someone like this? And how did your parents deal with it when you were telling them this is someone who's not really for me, or what's going on? So I think that's really question number one. And along with that, you may want to go into your cousin's marriage as well. Was it also, she didn't really have parents. Was she forced into her marriage with the person? Was she mismatched? Maybe you want to talk a little bit to that, Sara.
Okay, am I off? Am I unmuted? I think so. Yeah, Rabbi, can everyone hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
you
yes,
are.
we hear you.
You're unmuted. We hear you.
Okay.
Talk.
So this is a little bit makes my heart race. It's a little bit of a touchy subject because it's so personal. And again, like as Berel mentioned earlier, like that's like one person's story, and it's very important for me to note. Like I feel for my cousin so much, and on so many ways. I'm not here to besmirch. I'm not here to tear anything she said down, but I do want to set the record straight. It's a brilliant Hollywood production. That's all it really was, with a lot of twisted concepts to fit the narrative. And none of the producers approached anyone in the community. They never approached the family. No one asked for permission. They just went ahead and decided to tell a story that befits them. The mafia never came after her. One record straight. She didn't run away to Berlin. She was living here already for a couple of years, even after her book came out, and then she left to Berlin. Berlin was a calculated move. A couple of things, like her mother never lived in Berlin. Her husband never came after her. This is so important to know this, because that's not the truth. You want to build a story? Great. I'm all for it. You want to tell your story? Great. But don't twist the truth. That's something that I cannot stand for. I will speak about things that go on in the community, stuff like that. Yes, but not things that are not like the truth. So that's something I didn't get to mention earlier because we weren't talking so much about the movie. We were talking more kind of about the community. So I really wanted to set the record straight on that. As far as you said, your question, okay, about marriage with parents. So for me, again, I didn't want to marry somebody that was so Hasidish as like my parents. I was very openly, didn't want to shave my head. I came out and I did tell my parents that I was always a very, like an individual who expressed myself, I would like to say. And that's something that my parents already knew then, that I need something different. From knowing it to actually providing that kind of for me was a long shot. So I kind of started to look around and look outside, and my parents didn't like it, and so they did kind of find me a match via a matchmaker that seemed really, really fine. And I remember saying that I really want to check this guy out. I want to date him, like more than just, like a few, going out once or twice or whatever. And the answer I got was very much, this is a community. You can't have a boyfriend. You can't just really go and do your own thing. You have to kind of be within the kind of confines of community. Now, my parents are very loving people, but they're strict, and what they say kind of goes. So I remember it was coming to like the l'chaim or the vort, which is kind of the engagement party, and I kept telling my dad, I don't know. I really don't know about this guy. I don't feel like I am ready. And it was kind of like, this is a done deal. It's happening. My ex came from they still are kind of like to this day, quite like much about like, you check off the boxes and you do what the community does, and you don't have room to express yourself. And so me coming from maybe a house that did have more room for expression, not as dogmatic as you say, I didn't match. But still, from that to being able to have that much self-expression was a long way in coming. So there I find myself at the age of 20, divorced with a child, when like none of my classmates, people that I had a connection with in the community, divorce was not an option. You weren't getting divorced. You were sucking things up and doing what you were told. It was very much, I went through so much like emotional backlash and trauma. And of course my parents wanted me like to be happy. They weren't, but they were trying to kind of to push me to stay in the relationship as long as possible until it was coming to a place where there was abuse and there was so much more. I just could not stay, and I was like, I'm leaving. And then I was already kind of going off, and my parents didn't really want me in the home because there were other kids there, and it's all about if one kid was going to influence all the other kids, it was something they were afraid of. So I think, like what Berel said earlier, in terms of like when people don't know better, today I see that at the time my parents, they didn't know better. They had zero guidance on how to be with a child or how to deal with a child that just needs something else. And that is what I see is what happened with my cousin. She needed something else. She needed room to express herself. She needed belonging. She needed a home. Her mother wasn't accepted in the community already. Her mother came from a broken background. These are things they're not going to show you in the movie, because why should they? It doesn't fit their narrative. So again, these are all recipes for somebody wanting to leave. And I'm connected still very much within the ex-Hasidic community. So many of these people, yes, they are speaking up and saying, yes, finally someone's speaking out. But what they're not going to tell you is something that even a few people approach me. They're like, how do you have the courage to come back? Like, how did you do this? And I was like, so many people do want to come back. They just feel like they're not going to be accepted back, or how are they going to find their way back after they've already gone out and done their own thing, so to say. And to that, I say that you do have to have that love and that acceptance of a community of parents. Like for me, my father called me almost every week and just asked me to put on candles. He's like, I know you don't keep, and I know it's not something that you're doing, just light candles. Or like, I would still be invited up to my grandparents, would come dressed respectfully and stuff, and my grandfather would give me like a blessing and whatever. So, maybe there isn't that openly outward, like, hold on just a moment. Oh, sorry. My mom was actually calling me. There isn't that outwardly acceptance of come into our home with the pants and with your phone and whatever. There are rules, but it's come to a place today where there are so many kids that are suffering because they don't fit the typical bill. Had to shift. Things had to shift. Like today, I know like my parents are completely different. There are still rules in their home, and I respect it, but they totally embrace me and my way of life. And and the again, as I said earlier, this warmth and the truth, just like the truth, what is true. And I went through so much pain in my journey. I had nothing else what to do with this pain than to turn it to God, because I found like this in the secular world. I was not coming from the secular world. So however much I can educate myself and go and fit into that world, I'm still not fitting in there because I'm not coming from that world. In the Hasidic world, I was a misfit. There wasn't really much room for me there secularly. So there was a constant push and pull of being torn between two worlds. And from that, there was just so much pain in that I just didn't know what to do with my pain anymore. I turned it over to God. And that's when like a little tunnel kind of light started to open up for me. And I started to really see that there's something else, and there's something more here. And what I was raised with, it's not exactly black and white. So I hope that answers part of the question.
I know it's not easy to talk. A lot of it's very personal. You're not just talking about someone else. It's a journey you've been through. It's a lot of personalized stuff. But curious, and I'm bringing up, reading out questions that were sent. Did Deborah ever try to reconnect, even when she changed her lifestyle, with her family, your grandparents? If she did Was she rejected? Even yourself, did your parents accept you easily right away, or was it, a difficult thing to accept you back in?
Right. So it's a two-folded question. In terms of my parents, I mentioned earlier that when I did leave, right, immediately after like my divorce, and I was kind of like still living home in the beginning, I started to like not keep Shabbos. So I'd go into like my room and I'd be on my phone, and then I'd come out to the meal, and then my phone was away because I couldn't keep my phone on. But then I would say I was starting to really like started to hang out late at night. I was starting to find like, I also was quite active I got introduced to a promoter at a pretty early age, and you know how it works in the clubbing world. They want all the pretty girls to come out because that brings the boys. So I was going out a lot, and I was coming home late a lot, and my parents were in the beginning, they were watching my child with my son, who was very young at the time. And so there was just so much kind of, I would say, like emotional messiness going on. They didn't know what to do with me. So at some point they were like, we can't really keep you in the home because, you're going out, you're doing your own thing. You want us to like watch your kid. I was just trying to like find kind of my way. I was really, again, this is so like individual, like it's just personal to me. I was just trying to figure out who I was, what I want, why I'm so unhappy, like why none of this is alluring to me, why I don't want it. Again, I'm not gonna lie. There's a lot of in Satmar and in the community that I was raised with. If you don't do this, this is what's gonna happen. If you don't do that, that's what's going to happen. There was no explanation behind it. We do this because this is the beauty of it. This is the mystical part of it, which Chabad is so into, Breslov is so into, other Hasidic sects, they explain things. There wasn't much explanation growing up of, this is why it's beautiful. This is what's the meaning behind it. And so and so I was like, why is all of this so important? Why is it all about, you need to do this and you need to do that? So from all of that created so much turmoil, I needed to kind of go and experience something else. And so, yeah, I wasn't embraced in the beginning. I really wasn't. And I had to really kind of figure it out on my own. And there was a time where I was dating a non-Jewish guy from Canada, actually. Brilliant, successful, graduated university. He found me so attractive because it was like, wow, how are you coming from this background and making your way into the world as a divorced person with a child? He just was enamored by it. But the turning point was almost that. I realized that I realized that I was about to almost, like, the guy wanted to marry me, or was like, am I really gonna marry a non-Jewish person? Like, my children or grandchildren are just gonna be, at some point, they're just not gonna be Jewish anymore. And is that something I really want? So that was kind of like a little bit of that was kind of like the turning point. Now the other part of the question, and what was it about my cousin?
Yeah, did she ever try to reach out?
Okay, so my family, my father's side of the family, again, Deborah is my first cousin through her father. Her father and my father are brothers. That makes her my first cousin. She without, I don't really kind of want to, don't want my words to get twisted or anything, but her father was kind of, or is kind of different than the rest of the family in terms of intelligence, maybe, or mentally challenged. And her mother came from also a very challenged background. And almost everyone in my father's family, not almost everyone, starting from my grandfather, brilliant speakers, brilliant writers, eloquent, and very also direct. like in your face kind of, and not coming from a bad place, but just the mentality. And I think that for her, she didn't maybe receive the best welcoming in the family, especially being raised by my grandparents, because of kind of her particular background. And and as per like my aunts, my uncles, who I'm still very close to, they do believe that they did so much to embrace her, and they did. My grandparents gave her everything in their capacity. Again, these are Holocaust survivors. They tried to raise her as best as possible with love and care. In fact, according to one of my aunts, they think she got off with everything that's, like she got off too easy. Like she was too kind of like spoiled. I mean, she really did kind of get everything from the family in their eyes. But I think stepping into her shoes, I think she felt kind of, like not like she didn't belong and didn't have the best welcoming. And I think that may have turned her off. And on top of that, kind of, not maybe finding her place so much in the community as an individual. And then her mother was very anti, still is today. Her mother is part of the LGBTQ community, and she does not live in Berlin. She lives in Brooklyn, and she got divorced from my uncle, and she kind of had to go out on her own and make a life for herself. And so she was the one showing her, look, like you can have everything, you can do everything, look at me. And these are not your people. These are not people who love and accept you and whatever. And she very much was in her head about that. And so after her not feeling, I guess, welcome, her mother showing her a different path, she started to kind of like embrace that. But she was married to a very good guy. He was very open-minded. He did come from a more from ultra background, but they were kind of making their way on their own in the beginning. And whenever I saw them together at family events, they were very much kind of gaga over each other. Again, the outside is not always a reflection of the inside, but from what we knew and from what it seemed, she seemed happy. She cut herself off from the family. She did not want to have anything to do with us. She has a younger sister who always, who I'm still pretty tight with. She said she kept trying to reach out to her and she just wouldn't answer. She did not want to have anything to do with the family and with the community. And I think that it was very much us kind of standing in her way of her career and whatever. And again, I just think this is my truth. I cannot speak for somebody else, but this is somebody who built her success on the backs of the community. Just took everything that, that the outside world is eating this up. This is like their dream. How many people come out and depict this world and take it apart? And this created her success. So she's a brilliant writer. She's a brilliant speaker. She's eloquent. She's well thought and well spoken. And imagine what she could do if she takes this talent and she does something other than what she did with it. I can only see her going very far. Last year, it's actually really interesting, because the first time I spoke about the film, it was the exact 1 year anniversary of my grandfather's death. Till his very last day, he was sharp with it, completely on top of his game. He was a business, as I mentioned in the beginning, was a business person, an ultra-orthodox individual, and somebody who wrote for lawyers and people in the medical field speeches and stuff like that. I felt like it was really important for his memory to set the record straight, because he did, I cannot begin to say this enough, he did everything for his family, and we would not be where we are today if not for him. He instilled so much love and emotions. a Passover in his house, you didn't just feel it, you felt it in your bones, the way he just would put things down. It's, I just can't see anything other but love there. And maybe he didn't express it in the best way possible, but it's truly what he meant. And so I reached out to her when he was, I would say 2 weeks before his death or something. And I sent her a message on Instagram. And I said, and I don't remember the exact wording, but I asked her to fly in to just, say goodbye. He was leaving this world, and I got zero answers. So again, of course, I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt, but to me, this seems like a person who very much wanted to make her success elsewhere, and she found it. And when you find success and kind of a community around what you're doing, you're not really interested to embrace your past. But at the same time, I look at the movie, I look at everything that she's done, and I'm like, this is a person who's still very much in pain and suffering, because why are you going back to your past if you've created a new life? So obviously something in you is yearning and searching, and if you still need to be so stuck in the past. And I do hope that she finds what she's looking for. I would embrace her any day, because I'm a person of love and compassion and acceptance. And I stand for the truth. And that movie, it's not the truth. What can I say? It's just not the truth. So that's that.
I'm very in awe, really, to be able to talk. You talk so eloquently. It's something that's very personal, and really opened up the eyes of many. We are Chabad, ultra-Orthodox, but Chabad is looked upon very differently. And actually, I wanted to ask you, because you had issues with the world, even though you felt the love, and you said your father was always reaching out to you. But then you were able to find your way back. And many people, as you mentioned, have a hard time sort of embracing something that they rejected. I think that's an incredible incredible character it takes to be able to look at yourself and say, I left, but really I should maybe take a second look, and really maybe I should look again and try to revisit. It takes a lot of courage, a lot of bravery. And I'm just curious, what was sort of the thing that made you make that decision that, even though it may be difficult, I want to explore it again? And you mentioned a few times Chabad played a role, Berel. What is it that really made you want to revisit and start turning back towards, your Judaism being much more important in your life?
Right. So it's a great question. One I get a lot. I have to start by saying that it is a daily struggle. Sometimes there are great days, sometimes there are not so great days, where you look on the outside and it's so alluring. It's so exciting, so much freedom. You can do whatever you want, be whoever you want. No one's really going to stop you. So it's a struggle. But I spoke about my turning point, but I really want to go back to my grandparents. My grandfather, my mother's father, passed away right before I had my son, and I was with him right before he passed away. And I don't know, it was like every day almost that I was not, every Shabbos even, before I would get ready to go out to a club, which was what I was doing at the time. I don't know, I can't explain it. Maybe it's just me. I just felt his spirit right there with me, hovering on top of me and kind of beseeching me very quietly. Is this the right thing that you're doing? Go out, have a good time, but do you think this is the right thing? And for so many, I remember for a few, probably 2 years, I would just shut it up. I would just be like, just leave me alone. I want to do my own thing. Just leave me alone. And then, you get desensitized after a while. You open up, you like Berel was saying, you sleep with so many people, or you haven't relations with so many people. At some point you are desensitized. I did become desensitized after a while to everything, but I just there was one thing that I did say, like my father would not, just very lovingly, just light candles. That's it, just light candles. Or, that was like one thing. Then it was just like, I came to a point where I would go to Shabbat meals sometimes with a lot of ex-Hasidic people, or just even people that were, I've circled in so many circles, really. But there was nothing on that table other than food, talking, trying to see who's going to be with whom that night, like who's going to hook up with whom, or who's interested in whom. And even if it wasn't that, it was very much about just lowly. There was just like nothing there. And it was so empty. How much can I fill myself up with emptiness? No one was understanding me. I couldn't have a spiritual conversation about God with anyone, because they'd look at me and be like, well, what are you doing here? Or like, you look like this and you're talking about that. It just didn't match, so from not finding my place anywhere and just being in so much pain, I really had nothing else left to turn to but God. And when you take your pain and you elevate it from a place of just not knowing what to do, and you just kind of throw it on to God, something else is going to get kind of birth out of that. And what came from that was like, I was just like done. I was just like, there's just nothing here. There's nothing there. Like I don't feel like this community is for me, but I don't feel like the other people are really understanding who I am, or that I'm more than just sex and money and fame and all of that. I just didn't know what to do. And my brother, he does big Passover getaway programs in the Caribbean, and usually employs Chabad to oversee the kashrus and kind of like, he brings them down to be involved in these getaways, and I work with him. And that's when I started to kind of get introduced to Chabad. And I don't know, I was like, these are Orthodox people, very Orthodox people, and they're so happy. I was like, how can this be? There's zero bitterness going on here. At least I didn't see it. So kind of starting to like search and being around Crownites and many, like, over time, many Chabads, it really, like, there started to, like, a shift started to happen kind of in my head. And I was like, there's something more here than what I was, than the messages that I was raised with. And when I started to connect with that and to tap into that, like, just, whoa, it was like it just poured over. Things started to open up for me in a complete different way. And I must say that today, that the community embraced me because I embrace myself, and because I am so proud and happy and comfortable with who I am. They look at me, they're like, this is not a rebellious person. This is somebody who's found their way, who's connected to God and to Yiddishkeit and to Judaism in their own beautiful way. And they do, like, they really, like, I can walk in Williamsburg, yeah, here and there I'll get some stares because I do look a little bit different, but I'm completely okay and comfortable, And I also blend well with, like, I do work in the secular world. I blend well into when I need to go out and, and do business. So I really found out, like, what Berel said, you can be an ultra-Orthodox Jew. You can look and feel amazing. You can have your head screwed on straight, and you can accept like other people, and you can be educated, in different ways, and there's a place for God in your heart, and that's the truth. So many people, I think, that leave, they don't search. They're like, I don't want that. That's too painful. And this is fine. And even if they don't find satisfaction in it, they're like, there's no way I'm going back to that. And it's just so alluring and pulling you into that world where once you're used to it, you just don't want something else. And even if you do many people just don't have the courage. They feel like what are they going to do now? Who's going to embrace them? Stuff like that. So, that's really why a lot of people kind of stay stuck. But I would say I was really lucky for many reasons, that I was able to kind of like the blinds opened from my eyes, and I found something new. Like from my pain and from my misery, something new was birthed, and I came to completely new, like I transformed. I'm not the same person as I was 10 years ago by far.
Incredible. Someone asked a question, up to you to answer or not. You mentioned you have a son. He's 9 years old.
Yes.
Is he with you? What's his name? Is he with you?
Okay. It's a little bit personal and kind of a little bit of a story for itself. And I
As
really
much as
don't
you feel
want.
comfortable. You don't
Yeah.
have to.
So no, I think for the sake of of everyone and the story over here, I'm just going to keep it very short. My son was with me for the first few years, up until he was like almost 6. I did go through a very challenging period with my ex's side of the family, because they are so religious and all about community lifestyle, and there were fights and stuff like that in the beginning. Today I'm at I would say in a civil place with my ex, and there was a period of time where I wasn't living in the country, and so during that period I kind of lost the custody of my son. But I'm very connected. I speak to him every single day. I see him almost every other week, sometimes even during the week. And we have an incredible relationship, very strong emotional connection. And then there were those first years where I struggled immensely. I was divorced, I was single, and I was with a child, and I was doing it all on my own with zero help from my ex, really, or his family just really wanting to take my kid at the time because I wasn't from. They really tried to kind of, but my rights were my rights, so they couldn't do that much. But yeah, in the near future, I believe he will make the switch, and he'll be living hopefully fully with me, but at the moment he doesn't.
Okay, wow. Just one question that came up. Berel, you mentioned that the idea that you grew up with is maybe that religious families are large, they don't have much money, they're poor. In Satmar and the ultra-Orthodox communities, there are large, very large families. It could be 10 children is not an unusual number. How does it work? How does it work? Everyone has a roof over their head, they have to eat, they have the education, they're taken care of. Are they happy? Do you find that growing up in that type of environment, find people are still happy, satisfied, or they always feel they're missing something in life, maybe because they don't have that many material things, etc.?
Right. So first of all, I'm from a family of 11. So I am from a big family, and as you can imagine, the nature of that is that there are going to be a couple of there's going to be some drama and whatnot along the lines, as is just a lot of children. But I want to ask my mother this question. I asked her, I was like, did you want to have 11 kids? Is this something that you chose, or you just kind of went along with it? And her answer to me was, I wanted it. I wanted a large family because I think it's beautiful, and I wanted to create that. Now, that was my mother's answer. For a lot of people, it is very much about. Again, I wouldn't say for a lot of people, but I want to just backtrack and say that the reason why many times in this community people do have large families is because, you know, there's kind of like they feel that if, you know, they can't stop the flow of God. And when you're again, I don't want to go too deeply into this, but when you're having intimate relations between husband and wife, and you feel like, you know, why, if God is giving you children, why should you like stop it? But I know that like from what happened to me, like my relationship with my first husband, there was issues from day one, and there were people in the community that were trying to like help me, and they did say, you will go on, you know, birth control, and you will not have kids until you are settled in that relationship. And you know what happened, because my son did change my life and made me a better person, and you know, and that was meant to be, and it was not a mistake. You know, there's no such a thing as mistakes. But for people that have like good relationships, you know, between themselves, they don't see why should they go on like birth control. But if they feel like they need to, there are so many of the rabbis and halachic experts that actually beseech and tell them, do it for the sake of your sanity or for the sake of whatever. It's not like it's a given that people are just popping children. It's just you know. But the beauty of a large family, of whether it's between like the average family in the Hasidic world would have probably between 6 to 9 children. That's the average. It's just beautiful. It really, really is. When it comes to like a Shabbat meal, or when it comes to a holiday, the children are coming over, they help the parents, or the parents are going to the children, and then all the grandchildren. It's just so much beauty in that again, maybe I'm not saying that you can't have that with a family of 2 or 3, but there's something beautiful in having a large family. And I think that it started out as rebuilding after the Holocaust, as saving the generation, and then it just became more like, well, we're just having large families. But the answer, again, it's individual to your question. If children are well taken care of, and if they can, and if the families can provide. I know a lot of families in the Satmar and Williamsburg community. I'm going to say this: Satmar is probably one of the wealthiest communities in the entire world. The amount of money that circulates over there does not circulate anywhere, and everyone knows it, because these people are, you go into like Williamsburg, in the fancy secular neighborhoods, who are the owners? Hasidic Jewish people, mostly. You know, there is, and what do they do with this money? I really want to bring this out. The amount of chesed, and how do I say chesed, like charity and kindness, what they are doing with it, you're not going to find this anywhere. It's just, you don't find this in the secular world. I'm sorry, it's just the truth.
100%.
They and these are people who, after the war, they had nothing. They set up like a Bikur Cholim, which is a charity organization that goes to hospitals all over the world, giving large meals to anyone and everyone. No questions asked, no nothing. You're a Jew, you want? Here, take. And where's the money coming from? From people in the community. You know, they don't take a lot of these, a lot of them don't take like government programs and stuff like that. So people are giving so much charity. These are, a large portion of people in the community are very successful. So those who are successful, yes, they can afford their house of the 9 to 11 children. Emotionally, if all the kids are taken care of, again, it's a challenging question. If the mother and the father are healthy individuals, they do the best for their kids. They try as much as possible, and if they need outside help, they'll get outside help. But there's you know, it's individual. There are some that, you know, that didn't quite maybe make the cut, or a parent that felt like they just needed to you know, as you say, like pop children, and then they couldn't really quite emotionally handle all of that, and that's where the fallout is. That's where kids, I think, will feel abandoned or not well, taken care of, and I think that's always a recipe for a child looking for outside, elsewhere. But I know
But that can
in
happen
case,
that can happen
yes,
in a
exactly.
wealthy
Yes, it's
house
important
as
to know
well.
that can happen anywhere. Like that can happen anywhere. But I want to note that today there's so much awareness. I can't even begin to say this. The even for the women and even for the men, like there's just so much more than when I was growing up, that parents, they really try to do whatever they can in whatever way they can. And again, some people don't have the awareness. If somebody doesn't have the awareness, they're not going to do. But there is awareness. There's a lot more awareness. So yeah, that's that. So people, I think many people in this community choose to have large families because of the beauty in it, not because they feel like they need to be a baby machine.
Right.
Um,
Also, like what's really beautiful about the Hasidic and the ultra-Orthodox communities are the ones that have money are always there. Besides doing general community things as charity, Bikur Cholim and all that, they're actually helping out the individual families.
Yes, I forgot to
Imad
mention
has,
that. Yes, they
so they're
really do.
constantly
They
there.
really do. And it will be quiet, so nobody knows, so that the
Exactly.
family will still feel like their dignity is preserved. I know people that they didn't have money to marry off their kids, and within a few days or a few weeks, the money was arranged for them. Where do you find
100%.
this? Where do you find this?
And no
This is
names,
something.
no big shots, just
No, it's
quiet.
and like yes, and they're made to feel so beautiful and comfortable. It's just something that warms my heart so much. It comes kind of maybe a little bit with a price tag. They're not going to go out there and maybe somebody says, I want to have a secular wedding, give me money. They're not going to reach into their pockets and be like, here, take. You know what I'm saying? It comes a little bit with a string attached, but it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. It's just something that it just gives me, chills in a good way.
I think it's beautiful. Really, as one of the ideas of doing tonight's evening was to, and I want to say, we want to sort of wrap it up. If anyone else has a question, put it in the chat quickly. But before we go to wrap up the evening and get a chance to finish off, our goal really was to be able to open up the world and hear what really goes on. We saw what was depicted in the film as the way life is and what a girl's situation is and a marriage is and intimacy is and the way they're treated, etc. So get a chance to hear from the inside what is really, this is a people, this is a way of life, this is things that are going on. And not everyone necessarily lives this way of life, but the people who are driven to it are driven because of they believe in it, and there's things that they go. And obviously with it come things that may, as we heard, that you have to fit into a certain mold, you have to fit into a structure, it's community. I hope it was a chance that we're able to hear where, this type of lifestyle, because really to talk about Esti Shapiro, Deborah Feldman, the real person, we can't talk about her without her being there. Obviously, in the book, you see right away, she had a unique upbringing that's unique in any community, broken family, and being brought up by grandparents.
Exactly.
This is kind of a recipe of a typical person growing up, but really a chance to understand. And I think very much also, someone very often ultra-Orthodox have a window looking outside, thinking how great the world is outside, and getting a chance to hear Berel Solomon. And Berel, you were very passionate, and I know you're trying to make up for the first 22 years of your life. But, as the Rebbe said, whatever you are today, that's what's most important, and sharing in a passionate way. And obviously the idea is that everyone should be able to see and appreciate each other, because the Jewish people are one, especially now in the Corona crisis. It's a time of unity. We're one people. And the people who are secular, the people who are Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox, Chabad or other Hasidim, we have to understand each other. And the truth is, we all love each other, because when push comes to shove, we'll be there to protect each other. And that's what you see happens in Israel when there's an outside threat, and anywhere else. we'll be there to help each other. But the more we understand each other, the more we can learn from each other, and everyone has what to share and give and enrich each other's lives. In Montreal, we're a very blessed community. We have an incredible Jewish community. As we're seeing now, how people are going out and volunteering and wanting to help. And people are very proud of being Jewish, though many people have a secular lifestyle. They may not know a lot about the teachings or the ultra-Orthodox ways and all the teachings, but yet it doesn't make anyone less Jewish. And it's important that we all have the window where we see and appreciate each other. And when we understand each other, you'll find you can sit at the same table, and there's much more that unites us than maybe the differences are, and there's so much more that we can really enhance each other's life, and that's what the saying Am Yisrael Chai. We're one people. We stand together, and we should stand together in real life as well. So, I think Sara, to be able to come here and share. I know this is new to you, but I hope you're going to continue.
And Rabbi, I just want to point this out because I think it's also really important that Satmar or the ultra-Orthodox community in general, it's not that they're going to turn away any secular Jew. Never, ever. It's just not that they go out there like Chabad and embrace the secular world and try to bring them in. It's that they kind of try to preserve their own. But in no way, shape, or form is this to say that they are anti or that they're not going to embrace another Jew. Like my father my father is a businessman, and he worked with non-Jews most of his life, and even secular Jews, and it was just about glorifying God's name by looking and acting openly as Jew, and that's usually what this community is about. Again, to each to their own. So I just want to make sure that people know that it's not that these people are anti. No, it's just that they're just not being active out there in the world to, let's go out and find all the other people and bring them closer. It's just more like they keep it to themselves. It's insular, modest, but they will embrace anyone. Like my father works actually with somebody who's like secular. He married a non-Jewish woman, and the guy puts on tefillin every day, and they always have these conversations, and he's very embracing, very, very not anti. So just I wanted to point that out.
Thank you very, very much. And as well, I hope here in Montreal and Berel, this is a question, a lot of it was with Sara, connected to the film and the world where the film was. And we really appreciate and you're sharing everything with us. And you'll have in a minute your last word, Sara, if you want to, before you go off. And Berel, I'm just going to unmute you. People were saying there was a question that was asked. A lot of it was covered in what we heard, but there was a question that was asked: how is your relationship with your family today? Do you have a very good, tight relationship with your family? Do they appreciate your choice? Accept your choice of your life that you're living? If you want to.
Sure. I'll try to tone it down this time. So when I went to get married, it was very, very difficult.
One second, Berel, we don't hear you. 1 second. I don't know why. Berel.
Yeah.
Berel, 1 second. You have to go back. You said when you got married, it was difficult.
When I got married, right before I got married, it was very difficult for my family to understand this way of dating. I mean, I met my wife literally within 30 days of meeting her. She stayed, by the way, by your family. She stayed by Ganevish when she came to Montreal. Thank you, Ganevish. Naomi really hooked us up. She was a shtickle shotgun for us. But when I told my parents I was getting married to this girl after knowing her for 30 days, they're like, are you crazy? And which, by the way, is a very fair, if you're not used to dating the Jewish way, it's a very fair assumption. When I went to go get married, I 90 days after I met my wife was our wedding. or 90 days after I proposed. So from the day that I met my wife until the day that we're standing under a chuppah was 120 days. And out of those 120 days, we saw each other for like 40 of them. So obviously my parents are very concerned. I think I would also have been concerned if I was raising my child and I saw that happen. And I remember we went, when we were on I went to Kollel for a few months after we got married. Kollel is a place where you go to get, after you get married, spend a few months learning Torah. And I went with my wife to Israel. We were very fortunate that my in-laws helped us do that for a few months. And I remember one night I called my mother and I said, I'm a little bit upset that when I was going through the whole marriage situation, that it was very difficult between me and the family. And my wife, my mother said to me, she says, Ryan, she still calls me Ryan, it's okay. Although she commented in the comments below, she was putting yay Berel and Berel. So here she's calling Berel. Thank you, Mom. She said, Ryan, today I see your wife and I love your life. And because of the woman that you married, I have so much respect for you and for her and for your family. So a lot of the reason why my relationship with my family is good is because they see that, Judaism led me into a very good place, thank God. 3 beautiful children. So, and also not working with the family in business is something that's very good as well for shalom bites. They have an expression in New Jersey, mit family es kigel, which means with your family, you should eat kogel, meaning don't mix business and family. Family is meant to eat kogel with on Shabbos. I know there's a certain bracha on your family to work together in family business, but any family business has its challenges. Now that I don't work with my family business, my father is my father and my mother is my mother, and we're not boss and employee or whatever it is. And so between those things, we have the best relationship today that we've ever had by far. Baruch Hashem. When I came back from yeshiva, I forgot to mention this. When I came back from yeshiva after a big struggle, whether or not I was able to go, my father saw that sitting there learning Torah for so many hours that it made my mind so sharp that my father said to me, I'm glad you went because I could see now that with your brain, you could burn a hole through steel. You're so focused. He's in the steel business, so he used the steel analogy. So today, thank God, my relationship with my parents has never been better.
Wow. That's really incredible. And I do believe Montreal is a special city where we have a united community and we can continue to understand each other and really act as one and be an example for many other places of a strong Jewish community united. Nothing can stop us. Nothing can.
100%. Am Yisrael Chai, as you said.
So, Berel, do you want to say a last word? And then I'll ask Sara to say a last word. And there's a beautiful evening. I don't see any more questions. I think we covered most. Unless people are shy to ask that big question, but this is your moment. Berel, you have any last word you want to say?
Hang on, what's the big question?
I don't know. I'm saying it.
I'll tell you, it's a little sharp. It's a little sharp. Can I be a little sharp? Maybe not.
Loving.
So it's a little sharp. When I was becoming religious, people would tell me that the Torah is silly. And I said to them, how could you say something is silly if you never read it before? So I think that the Torah is open to anybody and everybody's entitled to their opinion. But you have to first learn it yourself, firsthand, not through Netflix. And I think that anybody who reads it will see that the beauty is without limit.
Beautiful. Well said.
Thank you.
Sara, tell us your last word before
Yes.
we close off this beautiful evening. Yes.
And then maybe we can unmute that.
Yeah.
Last word. I mean, I don't have anything.
That's
Well,
what
I'm
Chabad.
sorry.
In Chabad, we tell everyone we love you all. That's the last word.
I definitely love you all. I want everyone to know that. I want also people to know that my words, they're individual. They're not, by far not, I don't want people to twist or to say that my words means everything for everyone. No, again, this is also a very individual story, very individual to me, to my family, and I tried to speak for the community. So that's that. But what I really want to bring across is, the reason that I agreed to do this in the beginning was because of my grandfather, but mainly because I felt personally that I was lucky. I was lucky that God chose me, that he loved me so much that I was able to make a beautiful change in my life from a place of love and choice, and not because I felt that I had to, that I wanted to do something back for Hashem, and I wanted to show people that there's a way how you can live so beautiful, so connected. Every little thing can be elevated to God and to Hashem, and I just, this is why I wanted to do it. I was like, I just really feel like there is nothing else in this world other than God. And he wants the best for us at all times, even when we don't see it or we don't feel it. Of course, there are pressures and there's community things, but when you kind of ask questions for yourself and you dig in and you kind of like, you look for the truth, you find it. You really, really, really do. And that is really like my last word is really, there really only is him. He was, he is, he always will be. And what he's given us, it's from a place of beauty, from a place of beauty. I see it today. I feel it almost every day. And I wouldn't choose otherwise. I'm here because I want to be here, and I love it.
That is so beautiful. So I want to finish off. When I finish, I'll unmute. I want you to join me in really applauding Sara for being so open, so giving, so kind, so with such poise and such beauty and such modesty, and it's really very special. And Berel sharing with us things, personal things about your life and your journey and your passion. And let's all be strong and together, because at the end of the day, we have each other, and that's what makes us strong. So I'm going to mute it. I hope you're going to join me in really clapping for our great evening. Love you all. Be well.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very much.
I hope you all enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sara.
Thank you.
Thank you, Berel.
Sarah.
Feeling great.
Thank you all for
And
joining
thank you all
and
for
being
joining.
here.
Yeah.
Sarah.
Okay.
Oh, you didn't listen to a lot.
זה עדיין מוקדם, לא? 9:30.
Look at this guy sitting there. That's so funny.
Nice to hear Jewish conversation. Beautiful to hear everyone. And thank you all so much, one by one. I wish I can enumerate everyone by name who's on here, but it's so beautiful to have you. I hope you learned something tonight. You felt something, emotionally touched, intellectually touched. More important, just being touched.
please نمیره کارش کردی نکنه.
Every real Jewish life. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Great.
See you.
Well, yes.
Be well. Whoever wants could just leave. Whoever wants to stay on, we can have it for bring-in.
I'm speechless. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, leave the meeting.
Save chat.
Everyone's muted, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna close out now. Thank you all so much again.
Thank you.
Be well.